People from Trident Ploughshares are going to go and chain themselves to the railings around Parliament and bring the issue to MPs during Prime Minister's question time about the ban treaty and saying the UK must sign it. You promised multilateral nuclear disarmament, now it's on the table, why aren't you signing it? Sign the treaty!
Man the bar!
Hello, darlings.
Sign the treaty!
It's important for us to get out into the streets and ask our MPs to come and listen to us.
Well, we're just outside the railings of Parliament and we're here to send a very clear message to our government, and that is that we want them to sign up to the treaty that 122 countries have come together to agree, which will be a treaty to ban nuclear weapons.
What we hope to achieve here, I guess, is to send a really strong message to Theresa May and Boris Johnson and the UK government that they should really denuclearise Britain and denuclearise the whole world.
Well, we're outside now where a wonderful group of people have come from all parts of the United Kingdom, particularly a good contingent from Wales have come here now to show their opposition to Trident and nuclear weapons and making a stand on what is probably one of the most eventful days at Westminster, at Parliament, since last year's election.
I came down here today to Parliament to try to encourage as strongly as possible our government signing the nuclear weapons ban treaty.
The Labour Party, if anything, it must be a party of peace, and it should be a party of nuclear disarmament. It isn't at the moment. That's a source of sadness to me. I need to win this argument as Shadow Minister for Peace and Disarmament, but you need to carry on putting that pressure on elected members, on party members, and many party members, of course, involved with CND. You need to keep up that effort and that profile that you've had, making the case for Britain to sign the treaty, to get rid of its nuclear weapons. They're not a deterrent in my view, and they're certainly far too expensive, and they're certainly not independent. Let's use that money for life-enhancing expenditure on our health service, on our public transport system, but not on these terrible weapons of mass destruction that can only result in the end of life on Earth.
The only reason we are chaining ourselves is to make the link between the suffragettes and the lack of democracy happening in this country at the moment, and to prevent the police from removing us while we talk to MPs. About 45 people locked themselves onto the railings and the banners went up, and it was absolutely brilliant.
And the war machine rolls round and round, and the poor and the weak get trampled on the ground, and from where we stand their cries are drowned by the clink of the franc and the dollar and the pound as the war machine rolls round.
122 nations were united, and you are invited. But where were you? Where were you?
We'll live in richness and kill them all again. It's time we got to bed.
Sign the treaty!
Sign the treaty! Ban the bar!
Sign the treaty!
Sign
the treaty!
Ban the bomb!
I've attached myself in the standard suffragette fashion to the Houses of Parliament because I would really like the UK to sign the nuclear disarmament treaty, which is now absolutely live. More than 58 nations have already signed it, more than 12 of those have already ratified it, and the UK just is ignoring this consensus of sense.
Nuclear disarmament has been a very important policy part of Plaid Cymru's political manifesto for many, many years, and long may it continue. Despite the end of the Cold War, we are seeing governments across the world, including the British government, investing in a new generation of nuclear weapons at a huge public cost. You know, the Trident renewal, you're looking at well over £100 billion in terms of expenditure on that weapons programme. Money that should be spent, of course, on public services and reducing some of the major social and economic problems we have here. It seems quite clear to me that investing in a new generation of nuclear weapons, Trident renewal as it's called, is in complete contradiction of our international obligations and the treaties that we've signed in the past.
The world is looking on a nuclear power state to actually to be the first to sign the treaty, and there's every reason why the UK should be the first nuclear weapon state to do so.
We've tried everything. We've petitioned the government. We've lobbied our MPs, our MSPs. We voted for a government in Scotland that is anti-Trident.
I think this kind of protest is healthy for democracy. It gets that point across, and in a way that far too often you see perhaps these issues not really covered in the media as such, and when we need to make sure that there's a balanced argument, sometimes these methods are needed and necessary.
I think it's also really important that by being here, we're also upholding the right to peaceful protest. I underline the word peaceful, but it is important that people still have the right to come and express their frustration, their anger, so that the government is left in no doubt about how serious this issue is. The tragedy is that there aren't enough people speaking up about this in Parliament, but the more they see people who are prepared to, come here from all areas of the country and literally put their bodies where their beliefs are, I think that's very powerful and sends a very powerful message to the government.
Well, I'd like to congratulate all those taking part in this action today, and I hope that it will raise awareness and that we'll be able to continue these debates within the corridors of power in Westminster.
Well, common sense really. We're all say that we're for peace, well let's put that into practice.
So keep up the pressure. We need to do more actions like this, more discussions in Parliament.
Essentially, we want our government to be playing a part in the international process on disarmament rather than acting like a rogue state.
We must win. We must get our government to sign that treaty.
I think it had a really successful day. There were a lot of happy people at the end of it. We made our point and said this has to get into the public domain and be talked about. The UK should be signing this global treaty.
And